let us move to the next slide. Electric shock. What should we do when we have seen a person being getting electric shock, and what is the rescue and the treatment of a person getting electric shock or has already received an electric shock? Electricity can pass through the human body. Our human body is a good conductor of electricity, okay? We will learn this detail in our higher classes, how our body is a good conductor of electricity. So since our body is a good conductor of electricity, electricity can pass through our body. Think, for example, if we touch the electric switchboard and start receiving electric shock through our finger, the electric shock can easily pass through our finger to our rest of the body. For example, to our hand, to our heart, to our brain, to all parts of the bodies, okay? An electric shock occurs when a person contacts with the source of electricity. How an electric shock occurs? When a person touches electricity. It gets in contact with the electricity, direct contact with the electricity. If any part of the body receives an electric shock, it causes injuries such as burns and damage to the heart. That could cause the heart to stop. Okay, if we receive an electric shock, it causes burns. For example, our hand can be burned because a lot of heat energy also comes from the electric shock, and damage to the heart. It can cause immediate damage to our heart and could also stop the heart, okay? When there is a very high amount of electric shock, it can also cause our heart to stop even. Such kind of accident is called electric shock. This kind of accident is called electric shock, okay? Rescue and treatment. Let us learn what is the rescue and treatment of electric shock. Number 1. Separate the person from the source of electricity as quickly as possible. Try to separate the person as quickly as possible from the electric shock. Whenever a person gets electric shock, for example, a very strong electric shock, the person gets so numb that they are unable to move themselves or remove themselves from the contact of electricity, okay? Because their body gets numb, their brain stops working, so they are unable to remove themselves without any help from the contact of electricity, okay? Turn off the power by unplugging the cord, by turning the main switch off, or by turning off the breakers. If we see a person getting shocked by electricity, can we help the person? How we can stop the electricity coming? We should unplug the cord. If it's an electronic device, we should immediately unplug the cord from the electric plug, or we should turn the main switch off. There is always in our house there is a main switch that we can just immediately turn off, and electricity can immediately stop passing, okay? So we can turn off that main switch off, or we can turn off the breakers. Breakers are something that breaks electricity contact coming from the source of electricity to our switchboard, okay? We can immediately turn off the breaker so that electricity stops passing. Then the next point we have, if it is impossible to turn off the power of the board, use a board, try wooden stick or rope to get the person away from the source of electricity. Now this is something very important. We shouldn't touch with our bare hands a person who is getting shocked by electricity, okay? If we do that, electricity will pass from their body to our body, and both of us will be getting electric shock constantly. So we shouldn't touch any person who is getting electric shock with our bare hands. Use a wooden stick or a wooden plank or a rope. By using this, we can try to move away the person from getting electric shock, because wood, rope, these are non-conductors of electricity. Electricity cannot pass through this object. So we should try to hit that person with a wooden stick, or we should try to move away that person with a wooden stick. Use a board, dry wooden stick or rope to get the person away. Make sure it's a dry wood stick. If it's a wet wood stick, electricity will pass through it. Water is a good conductor of electricity. If possible, stand on a rubber mat, gunny bags, or folded newspaper. If we cannot find a wooden stick or a wooden plank or a rope, stand on a folded newspaper, stand on a mat, or stand on a plastic mat, not cloth mat, not fabric mat, because cloth is a good conductor of electricity. Stand on a plastic mat or wear plastic slippers so you can stop electricity passing through our body. Because if the end of our body is stopped by a plastic slipper or a plastic mat, electricity cannot pass through, because plastic is a non-conductor of electricity. It's an insulator. Plastic, wood, these are insulators of electricity. So we shouldn't touch a person who is getting electric shock with our bare hands, or just if you're just by ourselves. If you're wearing plastic slippers or we're standing on a plastic mat, then we should touch the person. Otherwise, electricity will also pass through our body. Do not touch the person who are receiving the electric shock, or you will suffer one too. Just I have said, do not touch the person who is already suffering from electric shock, or otherwise you yourself will start receiving electric shock, because our bodies are good conductors of electricity, and if we touch the person who is already suffering from electric shock, we ourselves will also have starting electric shock, because electric shock will pass through their body to our body. Number 2, call emergency services for help as soon as possible. This is a very important first aid. This was one of the first aid that we have learned. Call for an emergency service as soon as possible. Okay. Give first aid for electric shock if necessary. We should give first aid to the person who have received electric shock, because sometimes due to high amount of electric shock the person faints, or the person have heart attack, or the person gets very weak. We should give first aid to the person who has just received electric shock. Check for the person's unconsciousness, breathing, pulse and injury. Consciousness, breathing, pulse and injury. Check if the person is in its sense or not. If the person's eyeballs are moving or not. Check if the person is in its sense. Then check if the person is breathing properly. If the person can breathe normally, just like us, just like the normal people, see if the person is breathing properly. Then you should look at the pulse. Often other than doctors, we ourselves cannot understand pulse, but see if the pulse is low or not. We can check pulse by touching our hand and also our neck. Okay. And see if there is any other injuries in the body. Sometimes due to high amount of electricity, there we have cut in our body. See if there is any other external injuries in the body. If the person has a burn, give first aid for burns. If you see the person has some burns due to the electric shock, try to give some first aid. And the last precaution that we can take is, if the person is not breathing, give first aid and rescue breaths and chest compression. Just like that we have learned in a previous slide what is chest compression and how we can give rescue breaths, right? Just we have learned in our previous slide. That is how we can make a person breathe again. Okay? And if none of these works, we should immediately take that person to the hospital. We should call for an emergency service or an ambulance service. Okay?